right, Amy, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to finally have you here. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Alex. We've already
Um,
had our own podcast prior to this, so now we're just having after drinks.
oh no, totally, exactly. This is the dessert. This is the limoncello.
Yes.
The sweet
Ooh,
dessert.
limoncello. There you go.
Yeah, I'm refined. People might not notice that from the way I talk on this podcast, but
I don't think anybody's picked that up, especially when
this,
you call your girlfriend your missus. I love
yeah,
it. Thank you.
I think she's a term of endearment. Term of endearment. You like put a
Love
ring in it. But yeah, she loved this part of the podcast. But I thought like I always start the pod. I always like to ask my guests to introduce themselves. So do you mind telling me a bit about yourself? Who you are, what you do, and I always say most importantly how you got to where you are today.
Yes. And A, thanks for having me on. B, a long journey for me. I'm a little bit older than some of my counterparts around town, but I've been in the business 30 plus years, and I'm a restaurant exec. I've worked from great companies, from California Pizza Kitchen, 10 plus years, to Wolfgang Puck, Sweetgreen, Bluestone Lane. So I've had a lot of fun in my journey and met a lot of amazing folks. And I was dropped off. A lot of people in the industry have these stories, but I was dropped off when I was very young and given 2 quarters and said, "You need to get a job." If I was going to live with this woman who was taking me in, and she gave me 2 quarters, and the only place and the last place I went to that would hire me was Hula Hands, owned by Gilbert Robinson back in the day. And that was it. And here I am, 30 plus years later. And I would say that's all due to a lot of mentors and advocates and badass leaders along the way that have helped me grow. So, I'm one of those annoying folks that ask a lot of questions if I don't understand something and learn. I'm a big learner. So it's been super fun, and I'm excited to be on the show with you.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the conciseness, as we were joking beforehand. But no, I think it's amazing, and like I guess kind of acknowledging the fact that having great mentors and having an ability to speak up and ask questions is just a sign, and being able to like know that about yourself. Like some people like don't realize that that's what they do or that's what they don't do. But like knowing that, like, say, mentors and having great mentors and kind of seeking them out, like kind of really helped you kind of progress in your career. Like obviously great companies, like you mentioned some like phenomenal companies, but great mentors as well. Like when you think about like, say, the key lesson that you learned in your career, like what would be like, and then you can keep this person anonymous if you like, but what was something that somebody said to you that was like, that you still quote today?
I think I was getting ready to go into a boardroom for one of the probably the second time, and it was for Red Robin. I'm okay with that and saying that. And you know, the one of my mentors, even to this day, she said, you can do things they can't do. You deserve to be in that room. You know things that they can't do your job. So it was a little bit of a confidence boost, because you do get a little bit of that gremlin, the inner critic in your head that you're trying to manage while you're about ready to, you got to show up with confidence. So I think that just kind of checked me, because I had looked around the boardroom, and some had been in the restaurant industry, some hadn't, and they couldn't do what I was doing at the time. And so it was super fun, and we had a great time in the boardroom, and some of those folks are still mentors to this day.
That's awesome. And I mean, that's also just great advice for everybody who's like up and coming in their careers, like leaning into that. I think, one of the great things like I always see about Americans is this great confidence anyway, but like, your confidence has to come from within. And, we all kind of question our own confidence from time to time. And it's like, know thyself, you've got
Sure.
this and you've got it. And it's reaffirming it is just like, and then knowing that you reaffirm it and that like that was a light bulb is like, I think super valuable. I mean, I'm inspired now. Maybe I might take that from you, Amy, as well, to remind myself of confidence.
I think you have all, but there's not just one, right? Like, you're on
Yeah.
this career path, and you have so many people saying and influencing you, sometimes in things of, I don't want to do that. I don't want to repeat that behavior. I don't want to be that leader that these folks are talking about too. That's somebody I want to emulate. And I
Yeah.
have been so fortunate. So when I was sitting at a dinner table the other night, and we were a bunch of ladies where we were talking, and Christy Ouellette, some of your future guests, Julie Zucker, we're all sitting around the table. And it was interesting to me, because some of them had said they'd never had a mentor. And I
Yeah.
was just like, oh my gosh, I was sitting next to one of my mentors. And so I was just kind of shocked because I thought, oh man, I'm super lucky because I got about 10 of them and I call them for different things at different times. But I also know that they always have my back and there's a trust built. So
Yeah.
I just, I looked across the table. I'm like, you have to get some, you got to attach yourself. You have to make space for it too, though. And it does take a little bit of extra time, but it pays off in dividend. Like I wouldn't be where I am.
Well, exactly that. I think, it's interesting because obviously we didn't really cover this at the beginning, but I think it's quite fascinating is like, there's also the like nothing ventured, nothing gained, like as in
Mhm.
you've nothing to lose by asking somebody or building a relationship with somebody. And it's all the little things, they're in your career, they're in your office, do they want to meet you for a coffee? Will they take a call with you? They say no, they say no. If they say yeah,
No
like,
one's ever said no.
yeah,
I
like,
mean, I remember reaching out to the CFO at the time. I was new to Red Robin, and I asked Stuart, will you take some time for me? He walked me down to his office. I learned stuff about numbers and financials I never would have had he not done that.
totally.
And we still can reach out to each other. Or Steve Carley, I said, can we get a cup of coffee? At the time, he was running Red Robin. And he's like, absolutely, Amy. And he would have, I mean, we just messaged one another the other day. I mean, there's so many people out there. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? They say they're busy.
Yeah,
Go to the next person. Figure it out.
exactly,
It's not
exactly. And
going to
like,
come to you. It's not going to come to you. You have to go after it.
yeah, exactly. And I think like, I mean, I would definitely be of the similar kind of like headspace mindset. It's like
You
just
are.
go for
You come get us.
it.
Alex was
Stop
calling
it.
pickup
Yeah.
in such a good way. You have such a great energy. So we're
I
excited.
appreciate that. Thank you. I need to like quote that from my mom, so she sees that. So she's like, what does he do there in America? We don't know what he does.
Well, if we take a
Um,
picture and we get your microphone engraved.
yeah, I gotta send it back. Yeah, I gotta get it engraved. Yeah, just the Shure microphone M7. Apparently, I don't know. There probably might be microphone nerds on the
You need to
spot.
get a gold one. A gold one. I'll send
Put
you
a
a
little
gold
thing at the bottom, like in WWF or whatever, where they have like their like I'm in the ring kind of thing.
one.
Yeah, yeah, ready to rumble. But like one of the things, like, you talk about mentoring and, we talk about like, I mean, it's not a leap to talk about like, say, volunteering, for example,
Mhm.
and sort of your initiative that you're doing at the moment, which is in 1 month, everybody. I just want to say, like,
We're
for
sizzling and
sizzling
spinning.
spinning, and I'm gonna let you introduce that part and explain, why it exists, how it was formed, and like what the sort of mission of the event is,
You
or
really
the
want that
program.
how. So sitting with some of the industry greats, Greg Majewski, oh my gosh, the whole table. Jeff Alexander, we had Louis Basile. We had some really great folks sitting there. And Jeff Alexander's I was learning this that evening that he's been a spin class trainer for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, we should try to fill some seats up at your class. It'd be hilarious if we all went, right? And so he said, there's no way, Amy, you can fill up these seats. And I said, are you kidding me? If we post this on LinkedIn, we can get some folks. And then one of them looked at me and said, please don't post that on LinkedIn. And I said, it's too late. I've already posted. And the next morning we woke up and we were getting some really funny responses from folks, and they were going to do it because we thought, 10 a.m. on a Sunday at the NRA show, people go out. Are they really going to show up? So now we've gotten a lot of sponsors, Craveworthy, PepsiCo, mocktails. It's all for a good cause. So it's for the Gleam Network and the LEAD program. And so we're just trying to fundraise. And this program is, 501c3. It's all volunteer work and it's a nonprofit, but we're really trying to take those entry level managers and get them development and
Yeah.
some time with C-suite folks. Because if you're in a restaurant, you're working your shifts, you don't really get a lot of exposure to the C-suite, and you kind of got to move up a little bit to get there in some cases, most cases. So we just want to create a little bit of a space for them and have them reach out and listen to, reach out and come to the event. And then, the next event we have is Chicago.
Yep.
And we've got Tabassum, who's the Chief Development Officer at McDonald's. We've got some great panelists, and we've got the Illinois Restaurant Association coming to give some data and insights into these folks. So it's just going to be It's going to be a lot of information download to them to help their development, and also ask some questions where it's a safe space. The issue is that we were finding is, Alex, like if you go to a conference, as you and I know, like we just got back from RLC, it's a couple $1,000s to go. And a
Yeah,
lot of the mom and pops, they can't afford for their managers to go. So
not at all.
we charge $40 and it all goes to just running the event. There's no profit, but it's really just to have fun, get people out there, get them to meet others in the industry and develop themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, like, obviously, congratulations. I mean, an extraordinary initiative, and like, I'm so excited for like the sort of the long term payoff of an event like that. And we actually have. I'm going to be sending at least one person to NRA, so I will.
Are you going? Is he going to sizzle and spin, or
Oh, I
she, or are
mean,
they going to do
I'm putting
something?
Ruhan on blast right now, and I'm saying, Ruhan, when you listen to this podcast, you're going to
Sign
spin class.
up. You have a seat.
Yeah, so we will absolutely do that. But like to that exact point, I mean, there is like such a gap, like how do we get hourly workers into the C-suite? Like it is, I mean, there obviously are people. So like I don't want to say that it never
They
happens,
are.
but like on a fundamental level, like how do we expose people to understand that it's can be a career, not just like a job?
Mhm.
Like if you're working front of house, you're working back of house. How do we like get to the point of like really making people understand that like you can have a career in hospitality here and you can get to it? And I'll give you a good example. I did a podcast with a company called Arc Hospitality.
Mhm.
And they own like 48 hotels. They're like a pre-development hotel kind of development and owner operator kind of product. And I had their like director of HR on the pod, and phenomenal person. And she started as a housekeeper in like 12 years ago in the hotel, and is now their VP of HR, or the VP of people is what they is. I should correct myself, VP of people. And I was like, you are the story. I was
Mhm.
like, you're literally what
100%.
the industry needs is more of you, like to really get across, like that it can be done, and I think like your event, for example, being able to bring people to this event, not charge, they just charge the cost, whatever it was, $40 you were saying, and
Yeah.
like have people come in, network, and show, like present the talks, present the kind of insights that yes, it can be done. I think it's like one of the most remarkable things. Like I really think like the people who are able to kind of come up to the ranks, I think the story of that is just so inspiring for everybody else, because I think the industry needs to get this point across that like, we were talking before, like let's make hiring sexy. Let's make working in hospitality and restaurants sexy again, because like there's clearly a gap since COVID. I mean, technically speaking, we're back to pre-COVID numbers, like in terms of
Well,
like, but
it's
are we?
actually
You
gotten
know?
worse a little bit. So
Yeah,
we were talking, and I think I've shared this before, but we're at a 15-year high of GM manager turnover, and they're not
unbelievable.
going to, we used to say turnover, they'll go to another concept or, but they're opting out of our industry altogether. And it's such a great industry. I mean, we're the second largest employer in the country as a whole. And you can go from being a fry cook or a dishwasher to owning your own restaurant or
Yeah,
to being at the C suite. And I think that people forget about that and they're not really thinking about that when they're working their shifts. I mean, my first two restaurant jobs, I worked in the morning at McDonald's and then I worked at Burger King at night. And, and then I
competition.
went into the full service with Hula Hands. And,
Yeah,
those were just kind of while I was in high school. But then when I went to Hula Hands, that general manager really took me under his wing and changed life, like the eye for detail and the old ledgers that were this long. So we didn't have all these computer systems, I'm really aging myself, all these computer systems, but you had to fill everything out by the ledger. And, and then you're moving along in your career. And, one of the things I had asked CEO once, I said, why is it that some folks get promoted? And I think this was interesting, and some never do. And they really want to, but they never do. And he said, either you can take feedback or you can't. You can take feedback and you can adjust yourself or work on those things or bring those to, if that's your strength, get it, make it stronger, so that you're more of an asset to that business. You'll have no problem. But if you're one of those folks, you can't take feedback, you take it too personal, your inner critic takes over,
yeah,
stops your productivity, then you're kind of stuck. So it's we have got to bring the sexy back to this industry. I don't think people realize that they can have a really great career here in this business. And so many of us have proven it. I mean, there's so many great stories, like you were just saying, out there.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing. And I mean, so the nub of it, you're saying, is like an ability to like take feedback and learn and improve with it, you know? Like it's interesting because everyone takes feedback almost as a type of criticism, no matter what,
Sure they do.
you know, and I
The
get super
person is
critical.
giving you their time and caring enough to do it for you. So suck
Yeah.
it up. And, you know, I would always write it down. I'd mark it in my calendar that 30 or 60 days I come back to that leader and say, have I improved or haven't I? And if I've
Yeah.
improved, I check it off the box and I continue behaving or, you know, performing that way. But if you take it and you know, a lot of folks, especially women,
Yeah.
it will just crush them. I watch them just, their faces just get crushed. And it's not supposed to be that most of the time. I mean,
Yeah.
you will have a leader out there that does it, you know, poorly, but
Yeah.
most of
Right.
the time it's because they want you to get better and they care about you. And, you know, and that's really what it's for. I mean, they're investing their time with you. So I love getting feedback. So Alex, I expect feedback after this session.
Oh, I'm going to give you a laundry list. A laundry list.
What you need to do better. Well, I will work on that.
Well,
So
I mean,
cool.
I need feedback. The reason that, you know, you laugh, I got the mic because a friend of mine, an Irish friend of mine, WhatsApped me, and I didn't even know he was listening to my pod. And he's like, "Love the pod, hate your voice. Get yourself a mic." And I was like, "That's all I needed to like kick me in the arse and go, okay, like it's time now to like actually, if I'm going to keep doing this, it's time to actually
But
get
think
the
about
mic."
it. If you had not, you know, listened to him, you wouldn't be on this mic. You wouldn't be sounding even more fabulous than you were. So here you are.
Well,
It makes it better.
exactly. I mean, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think like spurring you into action, you know, but then it's like, I think for, you know, hospitality and for like GMs, you know, and I'm curious your take on this is like, you know, the expectation on them now is so infinitely bigger than what it was probably even 10 years ago. You know, what I hear from people is like they're effectively like a Swiss Army knife, data, P&L, gregarious sort of mix of people that separates good from bad, you know? And I wonder, I'm just curious your take, like, is there too much of an expectation on the GM now to really make the restaurant a success or to make the store a success?
No, there isn't. And I think what our industry does is it makes you very, very well rounded. So
Yeah.
you're listing that off in that way. But to me, yes, to be pretty successful, you need to have, I always call them mini degrees, and no degree needed, but for, you know, reference, a mini degree in recruiting, a mini degree in marketing, a mini degree
Yeah.
in HR, right? A mini degree in R&M. You got to know your R&M, repairs and maintenance. You got to know, you do, you have to menu pricing, like, you know, all of these financials, your financial acumen needs to be in a strong place. Like, but it sets you up for everything else in life. You end up doing other things really well because you get this well-rounded kind of, you know, leadership skill. And just, you know, you'll have somebody that leans in and has a strength in a couple of these, but doesn't have the others.
Yeah.
And that's okay. At the end of the day, it comes down to your leadership style. Are you an affiliative leader? Are you a participative leader? Do you lead with culture? Do you lead with, you know, I think a lot of folks right now, because it got so crazy during COVID with hitting their financials, like we were talking about people not paying their rent prior to this call. And there is a thing for that. But, you know, it's really on how you lead your business. And I think what people are forgetting is the numbers don't come unless you have the right people. And if you have the right people and they have great inputs into your business, the outputs come, and that's just the P&L, and that those are your numbers, and you're making money or you're not, and you're a successful business or you're not. But if you don't invest in the people up front, which is why we have Lead and Gleam, and Gleam's the mentor, we can get a mentorship, a mentee and a mentor going. But if you don't do that and you don't invest, and a lot of folks aren't right now, they get upset that they're not hitting their numbers.
So
So
that is exactly what I was going to say to you. Was like investment in leadership. And I think like, you know, like leadership is this sort of like quasi abstract kind of concept to a lot of people. Like people think of like Bill Belichick or something, you know, Bill Walsh if you're in California, you know what I mean? I guess you're in Southern California, so Bill Walsh wouldn't be your guy. But if
today
you're
I am.
But
today.
yeah, but you know what I
Tomorrow
mean?
I'm in Nashville. Next week I'm in Connecticut. It just doesn't matter. Leadership's just where you are.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when I think about it, like my take on it from hearing 100 and whatever episodes is that people talk about leadership and they describe it more than they define it. And
Hmm.
so you have all these different kinds of forms, but you acknowledge different types of leaders, like styles just there. You had like, I honestly can't remember what the specifics of the four that you'd mentioned. And that's something that I think about a lot because I'm like, if you were to get a job at, say, you mentioned PepsiCo earlier, like sponsor of like the event, for example, like if you were to get into the leadership track in something like PepsiCo, there would be specific leadership modules for you to get trained in, understanding the person who you are, understanding like what makes you tick, what makes you doesn't, your type of style, your communication style, all these different things. But we're not really doing that in restaurants. We're not really doing that in hospitality. And it's like, this
Some
is the
are.
this is
Some
some
are
are, but this is
taking.
the
Some
thing.
are.
This is the
Yeah.
thing. This is the point I'm making. Is like, you know, for such a people business, like we'd
It's
be
totally
investing
a
into
people
this
business.
to identifying this talent.
Mhm. We are a people business that just happens to serve food. And that is it at the end of the day. And my motto, and a lot of folks that have worked with me laugh, but some of them say it now too, which is just you have to be easy on people and tough on standards. I
Oh, I
expect
like
you to be
that.
an A+ player. I expect you to show up every day, have a perfect uniform on. If your company has uniforms, I expect you to challenge yourself to, hit a higher mark than what's been said and have fun doing it. And along the way, I want to know when your birthday is. I want to know what the name of your cat. I want to know what's going on with you personally. But you have to show up every day and you have to bring your best self. And leaders do that. And there are so many great leaders in this industry. There are great managers out there. There's great general managers out there. There's great area leaders or directors out there that do it. And if you have made an impact along some of those folks along the way, even the servers you sit down, like
Yeah.
I still talk to a lot of these folks I've worked with in the past that have come from being a bartender or, a dishwasher. And I still talk to my cooks from when I was a GM in St. Louis. Like these folks are moving along
Yeah.
and those are the best stories. Like that's really why we all do what we do, is watching these folks grow and learn. And for my mentors that, kind of took me under their wing, they say I'm one of their, they were glad that they could help me and influence me on my journey. And so
Yep.
I'm forever grateful. But people are really busy right now, Alex. And sometimes I think I'll sit and I'll talk to them and I'll think, I know you're sitting with us and we're here. We're at the C-suite level, but sit with the servers. Go hang
Yeah.
out for a day, do a round table, get to know what's working in your company and what's not. And at the end of the day, Alex, they actually run your company and they have all the answers. When somebody
Yeah.
is in a boardroom and they're saying we should do this, I'm thinking, has anybody asked the people that actually do the job? Because they actually will tell us if it will work or not. Sometimes if somebody will ask me a question, I'll say, hold on, let me drive to a restaurant, let me get in the back of the house and find out if this is
Yeah.
working or not. And most of the time they have a better answer. So I just there's just so much room for growth for young emerging leaders, and they can go in different directions like you said, Alex. Like they can go into HR, they can go into marketing, and they can do these other things. So I don't know, I'm just super passionate about it, as you can tell.
I couldn't tell, you're really holding back on me. But no, I find it fascinating, in the sense that like obviously COVID was a singular meteor hitting the industry of all industries, probably the most like, I mean, it was just an
Yeah.
enormous issue, enormous challenge for everybody. And then coupled with that is that there is like this sort of Gen Z that has come on after it,
Mhm.
and not necessarily been in the restaurant where people would be doing like, people working in pizza, like first high school job, people like yours was like say McDonald's, like Burger King, some people like pizza, slinging dough, that kind of stuff. Like those first jobs didn't quite exist, for people because everywhere was closed,
Yeah,
and
but they had other options. They did
they
Uber,
had, oh,
or they
that's
got
what I was gonna
government
say.
money, and so
And
different things were happening.
now that's the point I was making. And there's like, and alternatives. And so like people weren't turned on to hospitality from their teenage formative years that we have for 100,000 years has been like the way. And so now we have, like you were saying, there's a 15-year high turnover of GMs, like managers leaving, you
Mhm.
know the thing I see in the data here at every single podcast and every single sales call I listen to is that like we need GMs. So like there's turnover of GMs and there's a
It's
lack of
fine.
new GMs coming up.
Mhm.
And really the question is that I want to pose to you is how are we going to solve that? Like where are the GMs going to come from? Like what do companies need to do to get to GMs as fast, good GMs as fast as they can?
They have to develop them, and they have to invest in them, and you will see so much change in your organization. So I have development plan forms that we use. I've used them at many companies. And when I walk into an organization and they don't have them, you can input them, you can start them right away. It's just a conversation. A lot of folks, again, I've worked with it. I do heart checks. How are you feeling today on a scale of 1 to 5 about your career, about what's going on? And then after that, it's what are you working on and what are goals? I mean, you do have to set some goals that are attainable and things that they want to learn. It's sometimes it might just be going to the gym and taking care of themselves because they're
Yeah.
working so much, and showing them the quality of life they can have in this industry. Sometimes it's they want to go to a conference or they have a hard time being around executives. I've had that happen a lot where they kind of freeze up. And so then you're having them get a mentor to help them coach that through that. Or some of it's public speaking because we have to do a lot of public speaking. So you
Yeah.
send them a Toastmaster, but you have to put some money where your mouth is if you're going to do it. Sometimes you have people internally that can help develop.
Yeah.
But I do think looking internally and externally for those folks is key. And I may pick something up from you, Alex, and I'm like, you do that really well. If I meet somebody struggling with that, I'm going to connect you to. I want to make sure
Oh,
that they can learn from you, those kinds of things. So the world is one big oyster. You just got to go after it, and you have to find you have to find folks that will help them. And
yeah.
you have to take the time to spend the time on one-to-ones. You have to invest.
And that's the thing, when I think about like, what you're saying there, like that's applicable to the largest restaurant group in the country all the way down to your mom and pop, like investing in the people now is the most critical thing.
Showing
Like
them that there's
getting
options for them. Yeah.
show exactly. Like, and that's kind of like amazing that like we're at this point. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like that, like it's great that we're here, that there is like a massive industry acknowledgement that we need to start investing in people. Um, but it's like, okay, like let's not go back. You meant like in the sense that like before COVID, this wasn't really a part of that kind of conversation. Like it was kind of like the best companies are doing this and that is why they're the best, and everyone else is kind of just getting by, whichever. Now it's all of like a sort of, 5 alarm fire. Like you have to, otherwise you're not going to be able to
Well,
keep staff. You're not going to be
I
able to
said
like,
during COVID, for the companies that are still developing right now, their company will soar when we get out of this.
yeah,
And I think everyone was struggling. Like you and I were talking about, people are struggling to pay their leases. It is, in my opinion, that they got the government money. Companies were running off that, right?
yeah,
So they got a little comfortable rather than running it as if they didn't have it.
yeah,
Now they're out of it. And now you're going to see some change in the business 100% because of what's gone on. And so it's the same. If you take that and you put it in parallel with the generation that you were talking about, they didn't have to work when they graduated or they were graduating high school during COVID. They were going through the situation. They were getting checks. They were 18, whatever it was. Now they have to get a job, but they're used to this funding and their work ethic is different. The training is different. The learning curve
yeah.
is different. So you're opening a can of worms right now. It's a whole nother podcast. Now it's learning. So before in COVID, you would ask how people learned. Are you auditorial learner? What kind of learner are you?
Yeah,
And now it's shifted. Because it can't just be all tech. The kinesthetic learners are mostly restaurant learner where they make stuff with their hands and they're learning those. So that's a whole nother conversation, but it is now a topic that we're all talking about because now we're trying to figure out, you train them and you have to pay them now in California $20 an hour in some restaurant chains, depending
yeah,
on the size of them. And they're not giving you their best, or they don't know what their best is yet. And so now you're at an inflection point of, I have to pay this person a lot of money and they can't even say hello to the guest. So that's where lead and some of these other things will help those managers out. But there's a lot going on right now in the business that we got to solve for. But again, That's what's fun. You go to a party
Yeah,
every day, you try to figure out how to run the party and get people in the door and have fun and have the staff, engaging and having the best time themselves. It just flows and it feels great. And you have those right leaders that you want to keep engaging with.
totally. And I imagine if I was like if I was a restaurant operator, I mean, like, look, if I was in Bakersfield, California, okay, and in the warm heat of Bakersfield, and my
Of
restaurant,
all places in California, you pick up Bakersfield.
I just why I actually
Have
don't know
you been
why.
there?
I have been actually. I've
It's
been to the
quite
Central
lovely.
Valley. I mean, did you know that I lived in San Francisco for 8 years? Did you know
I
that?
think you told me that, but Bakersfield is not San Francisco.
No, it
It's
is
a
not. It's like,
they're different states.
yes, there might as well be a different planet. Might as well be. But I felt like basically because I feel like for the context of this, like, you know, like if you're like running like some like franchise location there, like burger joints, and you're struggling with like, the staff to say hello, whichever, there's going to be another burger joint of another brand somewhere near you that is probably like either A, going through that, so suffering with you together in it, so you're not unique in that sense, or there will be one that's doing it well. And it's like, what can you learn from that? Like, the great thing I see about working in, the restaurant business and hospitality is that, like, there are analogs for every one of your problems or every one of your challenges. Like, you can see success around the corner. Like, people look at Chick-fil-A and they go, look how well trained that staff is. The second you walk in there, look at them picking up the trash, look at them cleaning the counters, look at them saying, hey, like, oh my God, like, would you like a refill in your drink, coming up and asking you, and everyone's got a smile. It's like, yeah, that's unbelievable training. Like, that's like their way. You can be inspired by that. You can see places around the corner that are like dirty, or they have dirty bathrooms or whichever, and you're like, I don't want to be that. Like, there are examples of everything around you. And I
Sure.
think that's one of the great things about being in it. Like, I'll tell you what, like, even what I'm doing, like, there are like maybe 5 companies that I would say are like, yeah, in and around directly competitors. I'm like looking at their websites and I'm like, oh, they're tight. They got it locked down. I'm like, okay, we got to like figure out something different. But I also say, there's a sea of sameness. Like, everyone's got the same color, same font, same whichever. And I'm like, if I was a buyer on the other side, I'd just say you're all the same. So that's why I try to be different. And I'm like, okay, like, were I in the restaurant business, I'd be like, this is an inspiring time. And knowing that like hiring is a challenge, not just for me, but for the industry as a whole, knowing that
Hiring right.
training,
Hiring the
knowing,
right people, not just the
yeah,
total.
exactly. Hiring the right people. And it's like training, like, these things are there. The literature is online. Like, the industry events exist. Like, everyone is willing to give the help you need to make your business a success. And that for
Are
me,
those
where,
owners and are those companies willing to invest into the training once you hire the right person is the question.
well, exactly. I mean, like, how do you identify the right person? Like, I mean, and this is something I think about a lot, where a
There's
lot of
some
time
great companies doing it well though that help you. Like, you have companies that'll build what a great GM looks like for you. Right?
exactly.
And so you have those tools, you know what winning looks like, you build that, and then you've got this template to carry you forward. So yes.
Totally. That you absolutely nail it right there. Like, people don't realize that you can templatize the process for hiring. Like, the actual, like, how do you interview people for the intangible elements that make up a great person in hospitality, and codify them. Like,
And
that's
what
the thing.
works for you may not work for the other burger joint down the road, but if you know what works for you, you can find those folks and invest in training. And therefore, there are restaurant chains out there right now. They're doing so well and almost 0% turnover
Yeah.
at a time like this. And they're doing it right. They're spending the money on training up front, where a lot of folks seem sometimes to cut it because they're trying to make, profits. But at the end of the day, invest up front and you invest in some of those tools like you were talking about, Alex, you're in a good spot.
Yeah. And I'll give you a good analog for that. That's not a restaurant example, but I saw this recently, which really I thought was fascinating. Airbnb, when they launched, I guess they're hospitality, so it counts. So I mean, I take that back. But what's funny is, okay, they were like, it took them 6 months of interviewing to make their first hire, and they only hired 2 people in their first year. And it wasn't because they didn't have money, because obviously they raised capital as well. But like, how deliberate they were. And I was watching an interview. It was either the Diary of a CEO or it was one of those podcasts. But he was saying, like, we were so deliberate about the type of person we wanted in terms of culture to come in. And those early hires, those hires into those key leadership positions, were to set the tone for the culture for the whole organization. Now, I think you could count on your hand how many companies came out of the Bay Area in the last 10 years that are as successful as Airbnb. I mean, it's one in every $7 on the planet is spent on Airbnb, apparently, or in travel, I think, or something. Like they're like just so enormous now. Or
Mhm.
like hiring for culture, famous culture they have. And I think about that a lot. I was thinking that way anyway, but when I heard him say that, it's like, yeah, like, what is a hire slow, fire fast, like as in as a sort of adage, like you don't want to be too slow at hiring, but you don't want to be like whichever. But like I think the message is the intentionality. The
Mhm.
message is being deliberate about your process, like what you want. And to your point about the burger joint here versus your burger joint, it's like you design your process for what you want and you will get the people that you want when you hit that criteria, and it's like
Yeah.
devil's in the detail, like it sounds simple, but it's like, no, you can design the process and make it happen.
Yeah. And it's out there and there are companies that help you do it, that will help you build those tools. You just have to kind of invest the money in the right spots, especially
Yeah.
when you're starting out for sure. And that's a great story to share about Airbnb. That's you have to hire for the great fit, the culture and the where you want to see your company going. And those are great visionaries that did that. So and people say now that they need to hire faster because there's a staffing shortage. Uh, but you're just going to keep rotating that if you don't really slow down and do it methodically and really think about it and do it with purpose.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. It's like defining the quality person, but like designing your process to see that quality person, like seeing beyond what it is. Oh, sorry, seeing beyond what it is like when they're like you're actually interviewing them to like can you see the potential in the way you're looking for it? Can you grade that potential within the interview?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of thing. Because
Yes.
again, to your point, it's a people business that sells food.
Hmm.
Like people first.
People
I
first.
mean, it's quite an adage, frankly. I mean, I think that might be one of the highlight lines. You've had a number of like great quotes in this that I'm going to use AI to suck out of the video. And
I want to see that. I see. I'm a learner, so now I need to see how that works on the back end. But that's the
oh, I
AI.
can show you.
I do think AI is going to help out our business quite a bit, and some folks are scared of it. I'm welcoming it. It's some folks are doing some really cool things with their business to help the managers. To your point earlier, they have to be kind of jack of all trades, but some of the AI will actually help them so they can stay focused on the guest, spend more time with the guest. So some of the AI can help them do some of the work in the background from R&M to, helping with their financial acumen, all of those kinds of things with learning. So it's going to be really cool.
Totally. I think, I mean, obviously I work at an AI business. So it's like
I had not
technically,
noticed that. I'm
yeah,
kidding.
I never noticed that. Well, it's not on our website. And it is on our website, obviously, but it's not like as our headline. Although I'm laughing at not laughing at, I'm just like, it's kind of funny how so many websites now is like AI, AI, AI. Everyone is pitching themselves as AI. And I'm like,
I was going to say, isn't that kind of what everybody's doing right now? It's kind of a thing rather than like what is
yeah,
really an AI company, which again
yeah.
is another podcast.
I mean, I could shit in a lot of tech companies, and not just as a hiring platform for hourly workers like us, but I mean just across the board. Like, there's so many that I'm like, I was laughing, and this company will remain nameless. We were doing research on a tool that we wanted to put on our website, and we were looking at three different versions, and one of them had like AI first, whatever. Okay, and then we went into their pricing, and they have these kind of pillars of pricing where it's like you can see what you get for the SaaS. And I was like, it doesn't even mention AI in this. So like, what are we getting in the product if it's not like part of what we're paying for? I was like, they're just saying they're AI. I guess they're building some AI thing somewhere, but like it's not in what they're offering in literally the pricing page.
Hmm.
But I think like when it comes to like AI, I mean, like I'm curious, like, it's amazing that frankly, I think in the business of running a restaurant, it can only be an unlock, because I think if people think of AI as like a negative thing, are they thinking of like the Terminator? Like we're a long way from robots. You know what I mean? No matter what way you think about
This
it,
can
like,
help so much. I mean, there's some
yeah,
robots in the back end, right? Like Sweetgreen's got the canisters, the spice, the stuff that they're doing for accuracy, which is one
yeah,
of the issues there. Then you have, Chipotle with, the chipper, the guy who drops the chips. Like there's little stuff happening here
yeah,
and there, but it's never going to take away the number one thing that people go to restaurants for, which is hospitality.
totally.
And
That's
AI
exactly it.
might be able to help improve that in some aspect, but the human element it will never go away. And people still go out for the human connection. They
Yeah.
still go out to dine. I'll go out and sit. People laugh at me. I have no problem going and sitting at a restaurant by myself and dining because I travel a lot.
Yeah.
And so, and I love when the staff wants to engage and talk and, have that conversation. And so, that will make or break somebody's day. You hear these crazy stories where, during COVID, they go out and it kind of saved their life because they're living at home and they're lonely and they go out and they get a little, because we're still in this phase of people are still right now the highest mental right situation going on with loneliness. So you go out and you see these folks and these servers and you have this great opportunity as a manager to make somebody's day. It's quite amazing when you see it done really, really well.
Yeah.
Hospitality will never get replaced by AI, so I don't think anybody needs to be worried about that.
Yeah.
But that human connection will always be there, but can it help us solve a lot of these other problems? Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think if it makes the operation smarter,
Mhm.
how do we understand data better, better insights from data? How do we
How
think
to
about
hire better? How do we train better? Like all.
totally. They're like
Yeah.
unlocks, but like at the end of the day, like, people we're nowhere near a position where like we're talking about an industry like getting
Terminator.
robotized. Yeah, terminated. You terminated, you know what I mean? Like we're nowhere near that. Like people are
Mm.
going to be in this for the rest of our lifetime. Like it's not going to change that dramatically. I think it's like the way the business operates, anything related to the data kind of side thing will obviously see like to the nth degree, like I've no idea like what it's going to look like. I mean, GPT-5 isn't released and like Sam Altman says it's the end of like venture capital. You know what I mean? So like, I mean, what? But like that's like data. But like, you're not going to be able to replace like when you're putting beans in like the Chipotle bowl. Like that kind of mechanism is not really going to change anytime soon. Like AI, what's it really? Because there's like no data for it. You know what I mean? And you can invest in cameras and all that kind of thing. But so fundamentally, the role of people within the operation is not going to the people in the operation is not going to disappear, but like roles and kind of positions and new jobs will be invented within the floor. Like, you know what I mean? I think it unlocks a lot of other kind of potential. Like if you're GM, for example, spending a lot of time doing P&L stuff, like if they can help them do that faster, they can get quicker to your guests. Like
Yes.
that's an unlock.
Yeah.
I had Phil Crawford on the pod about a year ago.
Oh, Phil.
And yeah, and he was at CKE at the time. And 'cause I think he's moved on from there now, I think, I can't
Yes.
remember yeah, and, we're talking about drive-throughs, and, they were testing, like, AI or not AI, but, like, a chat kind of AI sort of, drive-throughs, and it's like, if that has 99% accuracy, you going through that drive-through, as the consumer, you don't really mind if it's a human or in this case, an AI that's like ingesting the order, and the food comes out to you, you don't really mind. But that role of that person can be replaced into a different section of the business now, like in the sense that like they're not necessarily needed for like the window, but they can be used for like a host. It kind of creates like it opens up capital to be expended elsewhere,
Mhm.
like the opportunity cost of that role is like now you can have somebody on the floor, or you can have, there's any number of different places you can do with people like that. That's not necessarily like exterminating or like terminating or whatever phrase we want to use here.
Replacing jobs. No, there's plenty of roles, plenty of opportunities in this business.
Yeah,
And I think it's just going to create different opportunities, but
totally.
they'll still be there. And this industry, again, is still the hospitality industry. And you have to have people do it to get the outcome. So it's not, could it be in 20, 30 years completely different? Sure. It's changing now as we're on this phone, on this call. Like it is, technology is happening. But
Yeah,
it's just great that, we're learning from it. And, you got to dig into it a little bit. You got to get used to Chat GPT, and it'll solve a lot of things that you spend time writing and things like that. But listen, the world is changing quick. You got to you got to stay ahead of it. But it all comes down to, at the end of the day, going out and getting a great meal fast from, getting great service, however that might be.
exactly. All right. Well, like we've covered a lot of ground here. I didn't think we'd get into an AI chat, but here we are, but I mean, it's for better or worse, it is the topic du jour in our industry.
Topic
And
du jour. I'm gonna have to use that one. Topic du jour.
you
I
could have it. You could have it. But like, I mean, it is. I mean, it is. I mean, like, I mean, we're all talking about it. We're all shilling it. Like, we're all everything. It like it's just a part of.
Mhm.
It's you know definitely we're in the sort of new era of some might call this an industrial revolution. Who knows?
Mhm.
Like there's many takes in it. But I really appreciate you coming on, Amy, and like we covered a lot of ground there. And I do.
I expect you see you sizzling at spin class.
Oh, for sure. I mean, whether I go, because I think I might have to go to my dad's 70th that weekend in Rome. No big deal.
We're
But
in the morning at 10 a.m. You can make it to Rome after. You
I
will
could
be
be in
fine.
Chicago at 10
We will
a.m.
get you
and
on
then,
Taylor Swift's plane. She will get you there quickly.
I'm going to see Taylor Swift in Edinburgh on the 8th of June.
I'm
I know
jealous.
Edinburgh. I know it's of all places. She released a new album today. This is the end of the podcast.
I I really want to hear it. My goddaughter is like in love with her. I had to buy her friendship bracelets last night. It's a thing. It's still a thing. It's just the whole thing is a phenomenon. That's another podcast too.
It was a big topic of women in leadership with on my pod this week. Where
What?
I mean, she objectively is. So I mean, I guess we're happy to
You
talk
can
about
give
it.
it all. You work hard, you reap rewards.
Exactly. But here, Amy, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Mr. Man.
Oh, thank you. All right, there we go. Boom. Done.